Hello, everyone. Welcome to another lecture. This one is going to be on Susan Blackmore's chapter, What is it like to be, fill in the blanks with, well, mostly a bat with Nagel. Here we're talking about consciousness and about the hard problem of consciousness. We got a little bit of that in the Clark chapters, but I really liked this, another chapter of this text. It does a nice job of summarizing the debate from a variety of perspectives very succinctly compared to other texts. I think there are certain complications of the argument, or it goes too quickly over some really difficult concepts, but it's a really, really good introduction to a lot of these things. So we'll talk about it a little more in depth here, and then you'll get a far more technical, more in-depth piece with the companion piece that I assigned for this unit. Um, she starts off the chapter by talking about Nagel's What is it like to be a bat? Nagel's paper, What is it like to be a bat, is about the subjective character of experience. What is it like to be you as a person who experiences things? Now, importantly, I'm not going to make slides for this one because I felt like it'd be almost doing a disservice to this piece because it does such a nice job of succinctly putting that information out there, and we can just sort of walk through it together. Um, but here, subjective character of experience, or the subjectivity itself, is just having a point of view, having conscious experience. So you may think things like dogs and cats have conscious experience, whereas rocks, trees, although there's always some debate, someone always brings up the studies about plants responding to stimuli. And that's an interesting debate that we can have, to what extent that might be something like consciousness or something like experience. But you can see what we're getting at, this having a point of view, having a what it's like to be you, to be a creature. And uh, it's not a what it's like in terms of comparison or analogy, which she talks about. Instead, it's something about the what it's like of experience. So there's a what it's like of experiencing, for example, a qualia, or a quail, which is the single qualia. Qualia is when you see red, that subjective quality of experience, character of experience, that you are having when you see a, say, red apple. This is the qualia of red, or quail of red. And um, we saw some ways of categorizing this between the dualist and the physicalist and Clark, so I don't want to belabor that point too much. But you can see that someone like a dualist is in an interesting position with respect to qualia, or conscious experience, because they want to say, look, it's nothing physical, and that's why it's so hard to explain it, because physical theory simply can't get at this non-physical subjective experience, or subjective consciousness. And any theory which attempts to do that is simply going to fail. It's not going to be able to explain what it sets out to explain. Um, there is a significant debate, mostly with Dennett, and I think this is less popular now than it was some time ago, this debate about qualia, but Dennett seeks to undermine this idea that qualia is a real thing. And you might be thinking, well, that's ridiculous, right? Of course, there's a what it's like of seeing red. I can see black and see red, and those two are different experiences. They have different subjective characteristics of those experiences. But Dennett's claim is that when philosophers talk about qualia, they often attribute something like private and ineffable, indescribable, unquantifiable. They use these types of terms to describe qualia, this the felt quality of experience. And he says, like, it's unclear exactly what that could be referring to. Um, is it the taste? Is it something about the molecules that are interacting with the taste buds and the interactions that are happening there? Is it something with the um, the light that's coming in through my retina and being processed through my visual system. What exactly are we talking about? And there's some, you can see the sort of impasse that a dualist and someone like Dennett might come to. Dennett thinks you're not doing much more by explaining that it's simply non-physical than by saying, well, there's nothing there to explain at all. But we can set that aside for right now. Importantly, what I want you to get from this subjectivity and qualia is that this is what's going to compose the hard problem of experience. So to give a clear example of this, we can talk about or why this might pose a hard problem. We can think about Mary, the color scientist. Um, so Mary is a color scientist who has spent her entire life in a black and white room. She has worn maybe black and white contacts. She's never seen color. She only has ever encountered black and white, shades of gray, obviously. But Mary is also a world-renowned color scientist. She knows all of the physical facts there are to know about color. So thinking back to the explanation of how color gets processed through our visual system, she knows all of the facts about what wavelengths of light constitute what colors or what spectrum they might fall on. She knows exactly how the retina and the visual cortex process color, how it's processed in the brain. She knows about the physics of surfaces and light reflectance properties of those surfaces. All of the things that we might want to say are physical facts about color that we might find in a completed right science of color vision. Uh, Mary knows all of those things. Um, so how does this pose a problem? Well, let's push Mary outside of the black and white room and show her a red apple for the first time. When she comes out of the black and white room, as Blackmore is saying here, will she learn anything new? Will she be surprised what those colors are like? Um, and we're not going to act it out because it would just be me acting out in front of you, the perils of online classes. But you can imagine that it would be, I mean, we have people who are colorblind and are able to see color based on these glasses, right? And it's a shock to them. It's very different. The world seems a lot, um, from their subjective point of view, the world seems a lot different than it did before they put those glasses on. And some people are tempted to say that Mary learns something new. She learns a new fact, and that fact is just what it's like to see red. And since this fact is not able to be captured by physical theories, then we get the hard problem. Because if physical theories can't get at this experience or qualia or subjective character, then any physical theory, no matter how complete, no matter how excellent in detailing how consciousness might arise from the brain, can't tell us why there's this additional qualitative subjective experience that we're having alongside it. And this is where you can imagine someone like Chalmers, who has the 80s rock star hair there, what he calls a philosopher zombie, where this is a person that is physically identical to you and me, but has no sort of inner experience. It's just blank. And you might be thinking, well, if I close my eyes and get put in a sensory deprivation chamber, maybe I can sort of approximate that. But no, it's important that it's completely blank. There's no sort of focal point of experience, even if it's not sort of a lessening or turning down the knobs on the sensory input. Rather, it's just shutting them off completely. And Chalmers thinks, look, if something like this is possible, if physical duplicate who's just blank on the inside, and he gives arguments to why we might think this is plausible or conceivable, why we can imagine it. And he says, if we can imagine it, then it must be possible. And if it's possible, then physicalism has to be false because If physicalism were true, a physical duplicate of me would have all of my same qualia and all of my same subjective experience, because that's all there is to me, right? Is this physical stuff. No matter how complex and how cool that physical stuff is, right? Um, that's all there is. And so, if we can get a philosophical zombie off the ground by saying, here's a physical duplicate, like take them in the Star Trek teleporter and copy them gene for gene, or atom for atom, and uh, that person could possibly be blank when it comes to subjective experience, then physicalism has a problem here. Um, and this leads us to, how do people approach solutions to the hard problem? Um, they seem to come in a variety of different forms, right? And I think the way she categorizes them here is excellent. The first is that it's just going to be insoluble or intractable. It's uh, not a mystery or problem that we can solve. It's beyond our understanding. It requires conceptual skills or conceptual knowledge that we simply can't possess. Um, Human beings are limited in their cognitive capacity, and maybe a really sophisticated AI way in the future might be able to figure it out. But for humans, we're never going to be able to understand it or figure it out. These are people like Colin McGinn or William James, who um, sort of speculated that this problem was not going to be solvable. It was going to always be mysterious. And indeed, Colin McGinn is often referred to as a Mysterian in this context, because he thinks this is something that, because of the way human beings are built and how we are limited in our cognitive capacities, we simply won't be able to understand it. And he has a book where he details this argument at length, but um, if you're interested, I can point you to some resources there. Um, Another way is, well, instead of solving it by, or saying it's unsolvable or insoluble, we can simply drastically reinvent the wheel when it comes to our physical theories. And Stuart Ameroff and Roger Penrose. Stuart Ameroff is actually associated with U of A and occasionally will give talks on this. Proposed that something like quantum mechanics is going to be ultimately responsible for consciousness. And indeed, once we fully understand or get some sort of better grasp on the quantum mechanics involved, we'll have a better understanding of consciousness. Um, I think there are a lot of good reasons to be skeptical about these types of theories, uh, especially just because of how difficult quantum mechanics is currently. And adding that mystery to the mystery of consciousness, to my mind, doesn't give us a whole lot of help. But again, I can point you to some resources there if you're interested in that. I think this will, one of these responses will be a paper topic. You could explore one of these responses and what you think or make of that type of response. Another way of going at the hard problem is, I think 3 and 4 can sometimes be combined, or they can overlap. Someone could think that tackling the easy problems just is tackling the hard problem. So people like, I think it does Crick and Koch here. Yeah, Crick and Koch. She does Crick and Koch, I'm sorry. Crick and Koch have this theory about consciousness that relies on oscillations in the brain, and they think that that's just what it is. Consciousness just is this physical process, and the questions that Chalmers wants to ask after just don't register. They just don't get a hold on. Once you've sort of sufficiently answered these easy problems, we'll have a built-in answer to the hard problem, more or less. And uh, I think in tandem with that might be this fourth area of answering the hard problem by just saying, Look, the easy problems are all that there is. There's nothing over and above um, the easy problems of, say, how the visual system works, how audition works, how conscious reasoning works, how unconscious reasoning works. Once we sort of have a really good scientific picture of all of those things, we won't have the hard problem. Um, and I think the best advocate of this is probably Patricia Churchland, which I can't remember if I've assigned it for this, but I love this paper by her. I think it's called The Hornswoggle Problem. And she uses examples like back when um, we were trying to determine what distinguish alive creatures from not creatures that are not alive, or objects that are not alive, or organisms that aren't alive, or what have you. Um, and there was a group of scientists or biologists in this era that were often referred to as the vitalists. And they thought, look, there's some elan vital, some vital spirit to living things that separates them from non-living things. Um, that is one way to, and I don't mean this to denigrate them, right? Of course, scientific progress is an arduous and laborsome task, and takes time. And I'm not trying to diminish theorists that just simply didn't have the information we do. But these vitalists put forth this vital spirit sort of explanation, but quickly realized that it didn't really explain much. And once we started to better understand things like basis of hereditary, of protein folding, of base pairing in DNA, well, that's related to Patricia Churchland's specific case, but things that relate to determining whether a creature is alive or not, reproduction, energy consumption, and absorption, these sorts of issues. When we have a better understanding of those, we can make better and perhaps more fine-grained distinctions between what is alive and what is not alive. Um, so those are the sort of ways that people have approached the hard problem. And we'll get a more in-depth and more philosophically dense treatment of it in the other paper. But I think this is a really good job of going through the landscape, say, of the debate and where people have fallen in regards to the hard problem, and introducing you to what the hard problem is. All right, well, I'll see you in the next video. Do reach out to me with any questions or concerns. I'm always happy to answer questions about this stuff, or schedule a Zoom meeting or in-person office meeting to talk about this material. Hope you have a nice rest of your day, and see you in the next video.